And like I touched on it briefly, and I think this is the biggest problem with PPC is that it is just transactional.
What does a dependency on PPC kind of look like?
Yeah, I think, and I've thought about this too in terms of how we're discussing a PPC dependency is. I think it's ironically enough, I think it's kind of a fallback for many sellers where they sort of see it as one of, if not the only way to really succeed on Amazon. I think, again, as we're talking about this brand where at that point in time, you turned on your auto campaign, you had your exact match for the handful of keywords that you hoped or thought were important. And that was really the extent of your PPC. There wasn't actively harvesting keywords. There wasn't doing, there wasn't systematic bid optimization. Negative matching was maybe not very sophisticated. And so I think where we're at today with how broad PPC has gotten and all the different ad types and how Amazon's doing its absolute best to create a pay-to-play platform, I think it really is on brand owners and sellers to sort of say, okay, this may be sort of an easy way to do it, and it sort of checks the box off for Amazon. So it's like you're in Amazon sandbox and you're giving them what they want. But what's the array of alternatives that could be more conducive for long-term success? And I think it's an area too where people that are, this tends to be more of my camp, where you're on Amazon, so optimize as much as possible for Amazon. And maybe if it's at the expense of doing more brand building, that's okay. That's okay. But really realize that you're on Amazon truly for a reason. And on the other side, and the other camp can be, well, it's brand building at all costs. I need to do things that may feel abstract. I mean, even identifying what brand building is may feel very nebulous. And I think that, again, that's why I think it's a bit problematic. There's sort of that camp as well. So ultimately, I think it's just important that sellers and brand owners sort of pause, reflect, and say, hey, what's my competitive advantage? If I'm starting to lean towards things that everybody's doing, we know sort of by definition, there's very little room for a competitive advantage there. There has to be the sophistication. There has to be an acute understanding of how to leverage it at a superior level. But if you instead broaden that spectrum and think about things like, influencer marketing, you think about, driving optimized traffic, leveraging other external traffic strategies, owning more of your customer. Those are some high level things that we can look at where if you truly analyze and go through that exercise of, okay, here's my avatar, understanding my product mix, what messaging and positioning and communication channels make the most sense to make sure I can reliably and engage and support those customers. Because that has just such a major cascade effect where this is when you're not thinking about creative ways of asking reviews, you're just getting them. You're not getting negative reviews because you're owning your customer. All of these positives that are in that Amazon optimization bucket show up when you make more effort to own the customer. And like I touched on it briefly, and I think this is the biggest problem with PPC is that it is just transactional. Amazon just wants you to sell to their customer, and then hopefully you win to come back and sell to them another day. What we want as brands is to, as much as we are able, own the customer, because we get all of that, right? We get the support, we get the engagement, we can reliably rank, we can have more predictable reviews. Those things all just so happen to be the advantages when it comes to Amazon optimization. So not to get too soapboxy, but this is why I feel very strongly about this in terms of that's where the dependency really gets to be becomes a problem, and one that I think brands, and I always try to be careful to generalize of saying this one size, as much as I say that negating or removing PPC would be a one size fits all. It's that nuanced perspective of what you sell, to who, and how are you reliably engaging and owning that relationship. And if off the jump you're thinking, oh, well, PPC doesn't do that, well, then what's next? What are you exploring to kind of effectively address that type of reality?